Okay. No, thank you very much. I would start the journey from early years. So I come from Kenya, as rightly introduced. I come from Kenya, and Kenya has got 47 counties. So our country is divided into counties, and I come from the eastern side of Kenya, eastern province, but now we call it. So there are different counties, and I come from Kitui County. In the Kitui County, I come from a place called Idiani. It's a village. It's a what we call the sub county, but sub county award because it is a smaller village. So anyway, so I grew up in Idiani village, and then of course I went to school still within Kitui for my O levels. O level is ordinary level for those who went through the Cambridge system of the British system. So we talked about O levels and A levels. So let's start with primary school because that is where the journey started. So my journey in primary school started where we had to learn how to recite mathematics. So you have to understand the multiplication tables and so forth and so on. So I remember that time we used to talk about standard 1 to standard 7. And then after standard 7, you do form 1, form 2, form 3, form 4, you do an exam, then you do form 5 and 6. That is A levels, then you go to university for 3 years. So in primary school, we start with my mathematics teacher, Mr. Joseph Maidia. So Mr. Joseph was sort of like a distant relative, but also a neighbor. So he used to beat us, particularly when you are not what he taught the previous day. You have to make sure that, today you remember it. And sometimes he will just come randomly and come and say, you, come to the board. So you go to the board and then he can now dictate, say, for example, a problem for you to solve. You are given 100 shillings. You went to buy sugar. You bought 2 kilos. 1 kilo cost this and so that. So tell me, how much did you spend and what was the balance? So now you are standing in front there and you have to figure out all these calculations. So anyway, if you are not getting it right and he thinks that you should get it right, then you get a cane. You are beaten because you can't remember what you were taught yesterday. So anyway, for fear of being beaten, I always used to study. You would find me, I wake up at 4 in the morning in primary school at that early age. Wake up very early in the morning. I study before we can go and take a shower and go to school. And so that my hard work started in primary school for fear of being beaten. Not because I knew what education was for, but somehow to some extent because of the environment I grew in. We used to work in the garden, in the farm, and my dad was a chief during the colonial time. And we were many because we had about five wives. So there were 5 wives of my father. And so you can imagine the children. By the time my father passed on, I think he had about 27 children from 5 different wives. All right. Now you can imagine in that kind of environment, and we had to garden, we got for the garden so that you can grow crops and sell them and pay fees. So we went through that system, and therefore hard work was always very important. So I didn't like to work that hard. I didn't like the garden work. So I thought that maybe my refuge would be if I work hard in school. And so I valued education from a very early age because I wanted to progress in education. But of course, I had role models. I could see, my sisters who were older than me, my step brothers who had, were very well established. So I wanted to be like them. And so I studied art so that I can be able to be like them. Anyway, so I went to secondary school. I found in secondary school, we had a very good teacher in chemistry. And I enjoyed chemistry because of this teacher, Mr. James Mackenzie. And because of my teacher, because the way he taught chemistry, moles, molecules, calculations, and all that. So I enjoyed mathematics, so hence I enjoyed calculations in chemistry. And I did very well in chemistry. From O levels, I went to A levels in Bugulu Girls. My O levels in St. Angela's Girls in Kitui. I went to A levels in Bugulu Girls in Bungoma County in Kenya. From there, I went to university, Kenyatta University. I went to do Bachelor of Education in science. But I majored in chemistry because of my love of chemistry in secondary school. And then from there, I finished my first degree, my Bachelor of Science, my Bachelor of Education Science. Then I got a first class honors. And for that reason, I was given a scholarship by the German Academic Exchange Program, DAAD, where I did my master's degree in water treatment, as well as leaching of cookware from cookware of aluminium from cookware. So we would boil water in different types of cookware, pressure cooker, and all that to see which one is leaching more aluminium. So we analyzed. So I did analytical chemistry, environmental analytical chemistry. So after my my first degree, and I got a scholarship from the DAAD. After I finished my master's degree, I was also lucky again. I applied for a scholarship in the Australian International Development Bureau. They had a program of EMSs, that was Equity and Merit Scholarship Scheme. And I was lucky also, I got a scholarship from Australia. And I went to Australia in 1991. So I did about 4 years of my PhD, a doctorate in chemistry, analytical environmental chemistry. From there, I came back. I taught at Kenyatta University, because when I went to do my PhD, I was already a tutorial fellow. And so I came back again. I was teaching at Kenyatta University. After 1 year or so, I decided to venture outside. So I moved to University of Botswana, where I went there as a lecturer in the chemistry department. From Botswana, after about 9 years in Botswana, I decided to go to South Africa, because I realized the economy in South Africa is large. And also, I got to hear that you can get, in Botswana, it was contract. Every 2 years, you get a contract, is renewed depending on whether they have got locals that have got, qualified to occupy that position. So I decided, no, I want to go to another, larger country which has got a large economy. So I moved to University of KwaZulu-Natal in Durban. And from there, I was a senior lecturer. And later, I got another position at University of Johannesburg, where I was promoted as a full professor of chemistry. So we had an applied chemistry department. So I was a professor of applied chemistry. Later, I became the head of school at University of Johannesburg at applied chemistry. Then after so many years, I think about 6 years in Johannesburg, I decided to relocate back to Kenya. I came back to Kenya. I worked for Moredat Institute of Oil and Gas under the Kenya Pipeline Company that supplies petroleum in the whole of the region, East Africa, the region. I worked there for 3 years as the deputy director of the institute. Then from there I moved. It was government. So they said, your age does not allow you to continue another contract. So I had to leave on a retirement basis. I got a job at Riara University as a deputy vice chancellor for academic and academic affairs, where I worked again for about 6 months or so. Then I was approached by the African Academy of Sciences to come and manage a program they were managing. They wanted me to oversee for a very short time, which I did. And when I came, the project didn't end. The program did not come to an end. So eventually I had to resign from Riara University to join the African Academy of Sciences as a full-time person, but also the fact that I was a fellow of the African Academy of Sciences at the time when I was being approached, and also being in Kenya and the academy being in Kenya, I was one of the suitable candidates to join, not the only candidate, but one of the candidates. So I accepted to come and assist them. And I'm still at the African Academy of Sciences as the acting executive director of the academy. No, thank you. Thank you for the question. So I take you back again to the village, to the Kitui, the village in Ithiani, where I come from. My mom died when I was very young. I think even before I joined school at the age of 5. She passed on, and therefore I had to stay with relatives. At one stage, I was staying with the wife of my stepbrother, half brother, because they were close with my mother. So I lived with my sister-in-law for a while before I joined school. So later I joined school. So some of the challenges I came across was obviously when your mother is not there, normally you don't feel that you are treated well. So you face those challenges of first, you don't have a mother, and therefore things that mothers take care of, I don't know, about their children, you miss those areas. So for me, I think some of the hard work came as a result of feeling that I just needed to be independent. And for me to be independent, I had to work so hard so that I progress in academic and get a job, a good job, I work and become independent and support other people. So that is basically some of the early challenges that I faced with. Going through the secondary school, the university, I wouldn't really say that I felt disadvantaged or discouraged or whatever as a woman in science. But of course, as I was growing up in the village, I would see there was that subtle discrimination where my brothers are free to go and roam around. And for me, I'm tasked with the working, you have to fetch water, you have to fetch firewood, you have to cook, you have to do all sorts of things. And my brothers are just there, they are not, they are free. And I kept on asking myself, why this discrimination? Why is it that one gender is allowed to, freedom and another one is we like slaves? So that really used to rough me the wrong way. And then I decided, you know what? This hard work is really what is going to set me free. And so because of those challenges I faced as a young person, I kind of fought to be where I am today in terms of progression in academic. So for me, as I was growing up, there was that element of feeling that I need to fight. What was I fighting? I felt I was fighting discrimination. I just wanted to prove to everybody around me, including my father, and my mother died when I was very young, but just basically to prove to anybody who was around me that I'm as good as a man. And I remember when I did my O-levels, that is Form 4, and I passed well to go to A-levels I was the first child in my father's homestead to actually go to do A-levels and later university. Later, other children joined university, but these are my nieces and my nephews. But among my siblings, I was the only person who went to university. So I was highly regarded because of that. I remember my father would write letters to me when I was in A-levels and write and say that, dear Mr. So he used to call me Mr. Catherine, because for him, I was a man, because if you are doing well, then you are a man. If you are doing badly, you are a woman. So I was doing well, so I was regarded as Mr. And for that reason, I felt privileged. I felt, wow, so in this particular case, we are equal. Men and women, I'm equal to men by virtue of the fact that I'm doing very well in school and my father recognizes that and so forth and so on. So I think that really gave me the push and the impetus for me to actually even do better. And I just wanted to maintain excellence wherever I went, whether it is in school, whether it is at work. Because I think I'm always chased by the demons as I was growing up, that I can't let the guard down, because, I need to continue proving. So you reach a level whereby you stand and say, I think I've proved, but then there's still something telling you prove. You have to keep going. You can't afford to relax. So I guess that those are some of the push and, things that make you, factors that make you even do better and just continue sustaining excellence wherever you are. So my message then to women and also to young girls is that first you need to set up goals. You have to have a personal philosophy. A personal philosophy is very, very important for life goals. Because success begins with development of your own personal success philosophy. What was my success philosophy? It was to see myself, pursue academic until my degree level. So when I reached the degree level, and I was the best student overall in the whole of Faculty of Science in 1986 at Kenyatta University, having about 6 or 7 departments. The best overall student in that faculty was myself. And I remember saying that, no, now I need to go and work, maybe get married and so forth and so on. I remember the Dean of Faculty of Science that time, Professor Ngila, telling me that you must come back and do your master's because you are the best overall student in the whole faculty. So that is how I got, somehow they helped me. I got a scholarship, the German scholarship, DWD. and then to pursue my master's degree. So that was my initial goal, was just to make sure that I secure my future by doing academic, so that I can secure a good job. And then from there, for me, I didn't have to worry about what happens after that. As long as I've got a good job, that for me was okay. However, the consequence of hard work was that now I did so well that the professor could not see that I can't do my master's. I must do my master's. So he pushed me to do master's. After I finished my master's, then I got a scholarship to go and do my doctorate. You see, now one thing leads into another. Yeah. So my goal was now, okay, now I need to be a professor. So as soon as I got my PhD, I knew the next target for me, a goal would be to be a professor. So I set my goals on how am I going to be a professor. So I have to look at the criteria to be a professor and then work towards that goal. So the message, in other words, to everyone who is listening is that in order to create something meaningful, we must create something significant. And you can never get anything. You can't achieve anything great. Nothing great is ever achieved by doing things the same way as you have always done them. There has to be a shift, a paradigm shift in the way you do things. And so you must challenge the status quo because you must take one step fearless, make a fearless choice on whatever decision you make. You must make a brave decision, one at a time, and you must be courageous for you to action your philosophy. So that is my message that I would say. So I set goals, the goals kept on shifting, because don't forget that you can't just remain on the same line. If, for example, your goal to be this does not succeed, you must change. And then you look for another goal to target. But whatever you do, you must have goals, because they say that you don't limit your success philosophy to only one particular area. You must broaden it, but then you must have a goal where you want to go. Because sometimes we are told that if you're not guided by personal philosophy, you'll be guided by fantasy. So I didn't want to be guided by fantasy. Thank you. I actually wouldn't. Okay, so this is the way I interpreted some of those challenges. I remember when I moved to University of Botswana. You are branded as as a foreigner, so a foreigner lecturer. And being a foreigner lecturer, it means you are treated differently from the locals, that is the citizens. And positions in the University of Botswana, even though you qualify to go to the next level, you can't, because they had a system where they fixed the positions. Like you must have, let's say, so many lecturers, so many senior lecturers, so many associate, and so many professors. So they had that hierarchy. And therefore, those positions, for you to rise from a lecturer to a senior lecturer, first they have to look at, are you a citizen or not? If you're not a citizen, oh no, we have to give this position. We have to keep this position until the citizen qualifies. So then you find yourself, you are limited in progression for almost 8 years. I worked in the same position, and my performance was always excellent. So if you looked at the checklist, you'd realize that as I performed at a level of either senior lecturer or even associate professor. But because I was a foreigner, I had to remain in one job level, which is lecturer position. So that really, I felt discriminated because of that, but not because I was a woman, because even men who are in that department and also foreigners were treated the same way, but because I was, a foreigner. So that discrimination came as a result of, your nationality, so to speak. So let's first look at my research areas. First, I did my PhD. My master's degree thesis or dissertation was on water treatment, and I was looking at if you treat water using aluminum sulfate, what are the residue levels of aluminum? So that is, I spend most of the time just looking at different water systems in Kenya to see the levels of aluminum. But also, there was also another factor, which was to look at if, for example, the water is acidic or basic, that is high pH or low pH, Then how does it impact on cookware? In other words, if you are using aluminium cookware, does it leach aluminium out? In which case, aluminium, you are eating aluminium, and aluminium causes Alzheimer's disease, or rather is associated with Alzheimer's disease. Now, so that was the first part of my work in terms of as I was climbing the ladder of academic. Then when I did my PhD, I did the sensors. So I would fabricate metal, coated wire sensors, and we put these sensors in a seal holder, and then we pump water in a flow system, and we measure different ions, like for example, it could be nitrate, fluoride, and so forth and so on. So it was a multiple sensor system for detection of ions or rather pollutants in water. All right, after my PhD, I came back now, I was working, but of course I had to develop my other projects, research projects. And sometimes you develop research projects which you must align with the funding that you have. So I found myself at one stage when I was at University of Botswana, we were determining water parameters in Okavango Delta. So we'll go there by the boat, we collect water, we want to look at different regions of Okavango Delta to see whether it is polluted. We also looked at treatment plants to see the different types of treatment plants if they are polluting water systems, say like leather, tannery, and so forth and so on, breweries and related. Now, as I moved to the University of KwaZulu-Natal, that is when nanotechnology was coming in. 2000, I remember it was popularized a lot in 2008. We had some people who visited Europe, from Europe who visited South Africa at the time. I was at University of KwaZulu-Natal, and I listened, I went for the seminar and I was excited. So I decided now I'm going to start my work on nanotechnology. We started with electrospinning on fibers. We would electrospin fibers, and these fibers, we pack them in cartridges. The cartridges, in form of like this bottle that I'm holding. So you put the fibers up here, so that as you drink water, you can be able to filter the water using the electrospun nanofibers. So we did a lot of that electrospinning work with my group, my students, my PhD and master students. We've published a lot, definitely, and we were also trying to come up with an innovation whereby you can take the nano fibers, electrospun nanofibers, and you sandwich them between two membranes. So I also did work on membranes, that is nano composite membranes for water treatment, and we wanted to modify that so that we have got a composite system that can just be able to pick not just metals, because initially our interest was metals, removing metals from water, but also to remove organics. So that is how my work grew in terms of the growth. So I could categorize my work in three areas with regard to water. First, it is to monitor pollutants in water, so that is water quality monitoring. Another one would be water treatment using these filters and nanomaterials. Then later I also came and started doing some work with the people from engineering department at University of Johannesburg, where we were looking at water treatment designs to see whether they are optimally trying to treat wastewater, because the wastewater, when it was treated, it used to be discharged into the environment. So it will pollute, if, for example, the treated water, the secondary treated water is not up to standards, according to what South Africa used to call it, green and blue standards. The green standards is basically when you have got wastewater, you treat it, so the standards must meet what we call the green standards. The blue standards is just drinking water. Does it meet the standards? So we were guided by that, and the contribution that we made was that the optimized system using artificial intelligence with my students from engineering was able to advise some of the wastewater treatment plants. I would have to follow up in South Africa to find out if they adopted some of the recommendations that we gave them. So those are my three areas of my research. And so in terms of transformation, have I transformed lives of communities? One thing I've always wanted to do, which I've not yet managed to do because I got detoured throughout my career somehow, particularly the last 5 years I've been doing a lot of management. And we know when you are doing management, you kind of you reduce the amount of time you spend in your research. I still do research. I still have students at the University of Johannesburg because I'm a visiting professor there. But my goal, particularly when I finish this section of the management, which I believe that I will be able to leave management soon and go back to full academic, is actually to go back to those fibers to see how we can now be able to package them in a way that maybe industries can support us to come up with prototypes, and then from prototypes we can now talk about commercialization. Okay, some of my students, of course, have trained between 30 and 40 PhD students, postdocs and all that. So some of them would get the ideas that we had in our lab and they ran with it. So they go to another institution, they develop it. But somehow I'm always in touch with all my students who have ever worked in my lab. So if there is any new innovation that is coming, I would know. But that is a goal that I've not yet left, that I would want to produce filters that you can mount these filters in a kitchen in the rural area communities, where women are filtering water for their domestic use at small scale. If we can move from small scale to industrial scale, which of course you must partner with the industries and all that, that would be great. But for now, I just want to empower women by fabricating filters, cartridges of water, and mount them in different kitchens or homesteads. So that is my goal, but I have not yet reached there. How far did we go? Of course, we developed these filters. We still need to modify these filters because some of them are carrying nanomaterials, nanoparticles. And if if the nanoparticles, for whatever reason, they leach into water, the drinking water that they're supposed to be filtering, then it becomes hazardous. So that is a bit that we were left now to come up with a mechanism or coming up with new innovations such that the nanomaterials that are encapsulated within the membranes cannot be able to allow leaching out of the nanomaterials. So that is as far as we have gone, but definitely we made a difference in terms of the design of wastewater treatment, but also these filters, even though they have not been commercialized, I'm sure very soon we should be able to get a commercialization of some of the work that we've been able to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm particularly excited about the way the insight you've given to us in this last question, because that's what we actually want to hear. We want to see that translation. We want to see that transition. Now, forgive me and permit me, please. Yes. How possible is this actually? Do you think it's possible? Do you think I know it's possible, but what do you think we can do? What will you do to actually bring this to bear? Because that's what science is all about, actually.
Of course, definitely. We don't have to reinvent the wheel so much, because the nanomaterials that we were producing, we are just trying to modify what is existing in the market. For example, if you look at some of the systems like in Germany and the US, in Florida, they filter water using nanomaterials. So it is not that nanomaterials have not been utilized for water filtration. They are in the market. But it doesn't mean that just because we have got nanomaterials in the market for water filtration, we cannot continue the research. The research must continue, because what we have in the market is basically just simple filters where you just filter water and you remove whether it is organic or inorganic, but you are not necessarily degrading the organics particularly, because we realize that the organics, like persistent pollutants or emerging pollutants, where you have got healthcare products, waste, pesticides and all that, the chemistry has to keep on improving so that we can be able to degrade these organics in water. And when you break them into smaller molecules like carbon dioxide and water, then you can now say the environment is safe. So the filters that are in the market are filters that will remove particles based on their sizes. But what we wanted to do is to target the chemical functionalities of the pollutants and then match that one with the nanomaterials, also with similar characteristics or similar functionalities. That way, there is a reaction between the filter and the pollutant, and the pollutant can be picked even at very small particles. So that was what we were aiming at, and that is, I'm not the only person doing research in nanomaterials. There's a lot of research that is continuing on nanomaterials, and everybody has got a target. You might be targeting this class of pollutants. For example, you can be interested in healthcare products. You can be interested in medical products. You can be interested in pesticides, so forth and so on, agricultural. So as you go deep into chemistry, you realize that chemistry becomes minute, and we have got micro compartments of this class of compounds I'm interested, and you zero in that particular class of compounds. Thank you. I'm now looking at to see when I put aside management and go back to university, go back to the lab. I would want now mentorship. Even right now, even I sit in management, mentorship is one priority I have. Mentorship in all sorts of ways. I get a lot of questions from girls who want to advance their research. They want to advance their academic, which career can they do? I do a lot of this mentorship. And in fact, I've started already researching on how to establish a foundation, Professor Ngila Foundation for Women in Sciences. Not just science, but sciences. Wow. So that is my next goal, and particularly coupling with the fact that I won 3 awards. South Africa gave me an award in 2016 for Distinguished Women Researchers in Science, in Physical Sciences. In 2017, January, Kwame Nkrumah African Union gave me a scholarship, an award for Kwame Nkrumah Women in Science for East Africa, because we've got 5 regions. And then 2021, recently, last year, the UNESCO L'Oreal Foundation gave me a scholarship, not a scholarship, but an award, again, Women in Science Award. And so when I look at these 3 awards, I'm asking myself now, I really have to transform lives because I've been recognized. Currently, the award for L'Oreal UNESCO is for Africa and Middle East. So I cover, Africa and Middle East for 2021. And I'm saying that I really need to use this to transform lives. And that is why I've decided to create a foundation so that I can be able to mentor girls, look for opportunities for them. This is Women in Science because these awards were Women in Science. It doesn't then again mean that if I see a bright boy whom I should give a scholarship, should I manage to raise enough funding, I can't give the boy. The boy will also get. But it's just that right now you have to create a niche area, and my niche area is the Women in Science because of my recognition.